My name is Chris. This happened when I was 19, back in my sophomore year of college. I was trying to make extra money, so I had a reputation as a reliable babysitter in the wealthier suburbs just outside my college town. The job on Halloween night was for the Hendersons, a couple who lived in this sprawling, modern glass and steel house in a gated community called The Glades. It was the kind of place with perfectly manicured lawns and a private security patrol. The Hendersons had 2 kids, Max, who was 10 and thought he was too old for Halloween, and Sophie, who was 7 and vibrating with excitement, dressed as a shimmering fairy. The parents, Richard and Sarah, were heading to some massive corporate Halloween gala. As she was leaving, Sarah handed me a bowl of the good stuff, full-size candy bars. "The rule is hand these out until 9 p.m., then the porch light goes off," she said, smiling. "After that, get them to bed by 10 and the rest of the night is yours. The alarm is on, but just keep the doors locked. We're the safest street in the state." The first 2 hours were exactly what you'd expect. A constant stream of minions, superheroes, and little witches. I'd open the door, they'd scream, "Trick or treat." I'd drop a full-size bar in their bags and they'd run off, ecstatic. Max was glued to his video game in the living room, and Sophie was meticulously sorting her own haul on the dining room table. The house was bright, warm, and filled with noise. At 9 p.m. sharp, I hit the switch for the porch light, plunging the front yard into darkness. The street went quiet almost instantly. The only sound was the distant thump-thump of a party happening a few blocks over. I got the kids settled with a movie and went to the kitchen to make popcorn. At 9:15, the doorbell rang. A single, firm ding-dong. I sighed, figuring it was a latecomer. "Who is it?" I called out. No answer. "Porch lights off, dude. Tell him to scram," Max yelled from the couch, not looking away from his game. I walked to the door, slightly annoyed, and looked through the peephole. My stomach did a cold flip. There was a man standing on the porch. He was tall and he wasn't wearing a costume, not really. He had on a dirty plaid flannel jacket and worn-out jeans. But his head was completely covered by a stained, dark burlap sack. It wasn't a store-bought mask. It looked like something you'd find in a damp barn. 2 crude, jagged holes were cut for eyes, but they were just black pits. He was holding a faded orange pillowcase, holding it open as if waiting. He was perfectly still. This wasn't a teenager. The vibe was immediately, profoundly wrong. "Sorry, we're all out of candy." I called through the door, my voice sounding weak and high. He didn't move. He didn't say trick or treat. He just stood there. I could hear my own pulse thumping in my ears. I reached up and, as quietly as I could, twisted the deadbolt. The soft click sounded like a gunshot in the silent entryway. "Who was it?" Sophie asked, trotting over. "Just a weirdo," I said, forcing a smile. "Probably an older kid trying to be funny." I didn't want to scare them, but my own hands were shaking. I decided it was a good time to get the kids upstairs, away from the front of the house. We went to the playroom over the garage and I put on another movie, trying to act like nothing was wrong. About 30 minutes passed. 9:45 p.m. I told the kids I was going to get us all some sodas. I had to know. I crept back down the stairs into the dark foyer. My heart was hammering. I leaned in, put my eye to the peephole, and my blood turned to ice. He was still there, in the exact same spot. He hadn't moved a muscle. For 30 minutes, he had just been standing on the dark porch, facing the door. This wasn't a prank. A prankster gets bored. A prankster doesn't have that stillness. I backed away, my mind racing. I went to the living room window, which was dark, and pulled the curtain back just a millimeter. I could see him in profile, illuminated by the neighbor's distant streetlight. Just standing, patient, waiting. I fumbled for my phone and texted my boyfriend, Mark. "There is an extremely creepy guy on the front porch. Burlap sack on his head. He won't leave." A second later, he replied, "Want me to come over?" He lived about 20 minutes away. "No, it's fine," I typed, not wanting to seem like I was overreacting. "I'll call the cops if he's still here in 10 minutes. I went to the kitchen. The Hendersons' house had a massive 2-story wall of glass that overlooked the backyard and the dark woods beyond. It was their masterpiece design. Right now, it just felt like I was in a fishbowl. I was grabbing sodas from the fridge when I heard a sound. A scrape, like wood on wood. It came from the back deck. I froze. The backyard was fenced. A high privacy fence. How could? The motion sensor floodlight on the deck suddenly clicked on, bathing the entire patio in harsh, sterile white light. And there he was, the man with the sack. He was standing on the deck. He must have jumped the fence. He was standing in the middle of the patio, staring right at me. He was maybe 15 feet away, separated only by the sliding glass door. He saw me. He knew I saw him. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He just tilted his head as if he was curious. The black eye holes of the sack seemed to drink the light. Then, slowly, he took a step toward the glass. He was still holding the pillowcase. He raised his other hand. He was holding a small, rusted hammer. He didn't swing it. He just tapped the glass. A tiny, sharp tink sound that seemed impossibly loud. I couldn't breathe. I was completely frozen. He tapped it again. Tink. He was testing it. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Mark. I fumbled to answer it. "I'm 5 minutes out. Everything okay? Call 911. I screamed, finally finding my voice. "He's in the backyard. He has a hammer." I dropped the phone and ran. Kids, upstairs. Now. They must have heard the pure terror in my voice, because they didn't ask a single question. I sprinted up the stairs, scooped Sophie up in one arm, grabbed Max by the back of his shirt, and hauled them both into the master bedroom. I slammed the door, locked it, and shoved the heavy oak dresser in front of it. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get a grip. "Mom's bathroom," Max whispered, his voice high and thin. "It has no windows." We ran into the massive marble-tiled master bath and locked that door too. I was on the phone with the 911 operator, huddled in the dry bathtub with both children, my hand over Sophie's mouth to muffle her sobs. "He's in the house," I whispered. I heard glass. Downstairs we'd heard it. The unmistakable, catastrophic shatter of the glass patio door. Pause. And then, footsteps. Slow, steady footsteps on the hardwood floor below. He wasn't running. He wasn't yelling. He was just walking, exploring. We heard the creak of the first step. He was on the stairs. He was coming up. My entire body went cold. The footsteps stopped right outside the master bedroom. We heard the jiggle of the handle. Then a heavy thud as his shoulder hit the door. He was pushing against the dresser. Thud, thud. "Officers are on scene, Chris," the 911 operator said in my ear. "They are at the front door." Just then we heard it. From outside the bathroom, but inside the bedroom. "Police! Don't move!" A crash. Yelling. I don't know what happened. We just stayed in that tub, crying for what felt like an eternity. Finally, a female officer unlocked the bathroom door. The house was swarming with cops. The man with the sack was gone. He had jumped out the guest bedroom window when the police breached the front door. They never caught him. They found the hammer on the kitchen floor. The orange pillowcase was on the stairs. It wasn't empty. The police told me later it was full of photographs. Dozens of them. Polaroids. Of the Henderson family. Of me. Me at the coffee shop I worked at. Me walking to my car after class. Me taken through the kitchen window just moments before, standing there, frozen in terror. He hadn't just found the house. He'd been watching me. The Hendersons moved 6 months later. I never babysat again. And every Halloween, I lock my doors, turn off all the lights, and just wait for the night to be over. This happened 2 years ago. My girlfriend, Anna, and I are huge Halloween people. We don't just go to parties, we go all out. That year, we decided to drive a few hours out of the city to the Reaper's Harvest, a farm that boasted the state's largest, most extreme corn maze. The website was full of warnings, not for the faint of heart. We will not stop the experience for you. Our scare actors are professionals and will not break character. It sounded perfect. We arrived on a cold Saturday night, a week before Halloween. The place was packed. The air smelled like wood smoke, diesel fumes from the hayride, and that sweet, rotting leaf smell of autumn. We bought our tickets and got in line. The gimmick was that you could choose your level. Yellow was a family-friendly path. Red was the full-contact extreme experience. We, of _course, picked red. They made us sign waivers. The entrance to the maze was a huge, ramshackle barn facade. A guy in a burlap mask and overalls, holding a property pitchfork, growled at us to get moving. The maze itself was incredible. The corn stalks were easily 10 feet high, creating a dense, claustrophobic wall. The path was muddy and uneven. Every few minutes, a fog machine would blast or someone with a chainsaw would jump out of the corn. We were laughing, screaming, having the time of our lives. About an hour in, we were deep. We hadn't seen another group for at least 20 minutes. The screams of the other patrons had faded, and all we could hear was the rustle of the corn and our own footsteps in the mud. "Man, they really make you work for it," Anna said, her breath fogging in the cold air. The path split and we took a left. It led to a dead end. We turned around, took the other path. Another dead end. We were lost. Genuinely lost. "This is part of the fun, right?" I said, but a real kernel of anxiety was starting to form. The scare actors had disappeared. It was just quiet. Too quiet. The only sound was the wind, which made the millions of dry stalks whisper and shift. It sounded like voices. We walked for another 10 minutes, turning left, then right again. We were hopelessly turned around. That's when we came to a small clearing. In the middle of the clearing was a single scarecrow. It wasn't like the cartoonish ones at the entrance. This one was realistic. It was dressed in filthy, tattered farmer's clothes. Its head was a stained burlap sack stuffed with straw that poked out of the seams. It was mounted on a thick wooden T-bar. It was just standing there, its arms outstretched. Creepy, Anna whispered, clinging to my arm. Let's go back. We turned to leave the clearing, and I know this sounds impossible, but the path we'd come in on was gone. It was just a solid wall of corn. I pushed at it. The stalks were thick, densely planted. This wasn't the path. What the hell? I said, my voice shaking. We must have missed a turn. We turned around, and the scarecrow was gone. The T-bar post was still there, sticking out of the mud, but the scarecrow itself was gone. Okay, very funny, I yelled out, thinking it was an actor. You got us. We're lost, can you point us to the exit? Only the wind replied. Anna was starting to hyperventilate. Mike, let's just push through. We have to get out. We turned our backs to the post and started shoving our way through the wall of corn. It was incredibly difficult. The stalks were rough, scratching our faces, and the ground was sucking at our boots. After about 30 seconds of pushing, we broke through onto another path. We both stood there, panting, covered in mud and leaf debris. See? We're fine, I said, trying to reassure both of us. Then I looked down the path. About 50 feet ahead, in the middle of the trail, was the scarecrow. It was just standing there, not on a post, just standing. Its arms were at its sides. It's an actor, Anna said, her voice paper thin. It has to be. Hey, I yelled. We're lost, man. This isn't funny. The figure didn't move. It just stood, its burlap sack head tilted slightly as if listening. We started to back away slowly. We turned to go the other way. And there, at the other end of the path, was another one. Identical. Filthy overalls. Burlap sack head. Mike, Anna whimpered, grabbing my hand so hard her nails dug into my skin. We were trapped. One in front, one behind. On three, I whispered, we run. We pushed past the one in front of us. Just run. 1, 2. Before I could say 3, the one behind us started moving. It wasn't a run. It was a lurch. A fast, shambling, unnatural walk. And it was silent. No footsteps in the mud. Just this, lurching. We didn't wait. We screamed and ran straight at the one in front of us. As we got closer, I saw the details. The mask wasn't a mask. The burlap was stitched with thick black thread to the skin of the neck. There were dark, wet stains around the eye and mouth holes. It wasn't straw poking out. It was hair. It raised its arms as we approached. I shoved Anna behind me and barreled straight into it, expecting to hit a person. There was no one there. I mean, there was, but it wasn't, right? It was like hitting a bag of wet sand and sticks. It was heavy, but it had no solid core. It toppled over with a wet thud, and we just ran. We ran and ran, not following the path, just crashing through the corn, screaming our lungs out. We could hear the rustle behind us, keeping pace. It was fast. I don't know how long we ran. My lungs were on fire. We burst out of the corn wall and tumbled right onto the hayride path, a wide gravel road that circled the property. A tractor pulling a wagon full of families was driving by. They all stared at us. 2 people, covered in mud, scratches, and tears, looking like we'd just seen a ghost. The driver stopped. You two okay? You're not supposed to be in this section. We just nodded, unable to speak, and climbed onto the wagon. The family stared at us. We rode in silence back to the main barn. As we were pulling up, I looked back at the maze. The massive wall of corn was dark, a black rectangle against the night sky. And just at the edge where we'd come out, I saw him, the scarecrow. It was just standing there at the edge of the light, watching the wagon. Then it slowly raised one hand in a small, mocking wave before melting back into the stalks. We got in our car. We didn't talk. We just drove. When we got home, we threw away the clothes we were wearing. They were covered in mud, but also something else. A thick, dark, sticky substance that smelled like rotten metal. We never found out what the Reaper's harvest was really harvesting. We checked the news. We looked online. Nothing. The farm's website just had its usual positive reviews. But I know what I saw. That wasn't an actor. That wasn't a prank. And we weren't just lost. We were being hunted. I work in a standard, soul-crushing corporate office. The kind with gray cubicles, buzzing fluorescent lights, and that faint smell of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. This happened last Halloween. The company, in a desperate attempt to boost morale, decided to have a mandatory costume party and potluck in the main break room on the 31st. My story isn't about the party. It's about a guy in my department, Alex. Alex was off. He wasn't overtly creepy in a way you could complain to HR about. He was just unsettling. He'd stare a little too long. He'd accidentally be at the coffee machine every time I was. He'd like my social media posts from 3 years ago at 2 in the morning. I had him blocked on most platforms, but he always seemed to know things about my life I hadn't shared at work. For the party, I dressed as a vampire, a lazy costume with a black dress, dark lipstick, and some cheap plastic fangs. I just wanted to show my face, eat a free brownie, and get back to my desk. Alex came to the party too. He was wearing a mask. It was one of those blank, white, smiling but sinister plastic masks, the kind you see in thriller movies. He had on a black hoodie and black gloves. It was a generic, zero-effort costume. The entire party, he just stood in the corner, holding a plate of food he never ate, just watching. The smiling, plastic mask was always angled toward me. I tried to ignore him. I chatted with my friend Sarah from accounting, I grabbed a cookie, and then I left. I went back to my cubicle, which was in a quiet corner of the 4th floor, and tried to get some work done. The party wound down around 3 p.m. People, still in costume, started to trickle back to their desks, the sugar high wearing off. The office got quiet again. 4 p.m. 4:30 p.m. I was trying to finish a report. I was so focused I didn't hear him walk up. I just felt it, that someone is behind me feeling. I spun around in my chair and he was standing there. Alex, still in the mask and hoodie. Jesus, Alex, you scared the hell out of me, I said, my heart pounding. Can I help you? He didn't say anything. The grinning mask just stared at me. The eye holes were black and I couldn't see his eyes. Alex, I said, my voice sharper. The party's over, man. Take the mask off. He just stood there. The silence stretched. It was maybe 10 seconds, but it felt like an hour. The fluorescent light above buzzed. I could hear someone 3 rows over typing. Then he slowly raised a gloved hand, gave me a single, slow wave, and walked away. He didn't walk back to his desk. He walked toward the stairwell and disappeared. I sat there, my heart racing, my palms sweating. I was furious, but also terrified. It was so aggressive, so intimidating. I packed up my things immediately. I told my manager I was feeling sick and I was using my PTO. I just wanted to get out of there. I grabbed my bag, went to the elevator, and mashed the lobby button. I live in a high-rise apartment building about 20 minutes from my office. It has key fob access, a 24-hour doorman, and security cameras. It's one of the reasons I pay the high rent. I felt safe there. I got home, double-locked my door, and made a drink. I was rattled. I sent a long, angry text to Sarah about what Alex did. That guy is a psycho, she wrote back. You should report him. I agreed. I was going to. First thing in the morning. The sun went down. It was Halloween night. I put on a movie, turned off all my lights except a small lamp, and tried to relax. I wasn't giving out candy. My building didn't allow it. Around 9 p.m., I was starting to doze off on the couch when my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Great costume. You looked good. My blood ran cold. I didn't reply. It had to be him. How did he get my number? My number wasn't public. I blocked the number and went to my window. My apartment was on the 10th floor. I looked down at the street. It was busy with partygoers, people heading to bars. No one was looking up. I drew my curtains, checked my locks again, and put my phone on silent. An hour later, I was in my kitchen getting water. My apartment was dead silent. And then I heard it. A faint scratching sound. It was coming from my front door. Scratch, scrape, scratch. Like a key being jiggled in the lock. Or like a fingernail being dragged across the metal. Who's there? I yelled. The scratching stopped. Dead silence. I crept to the door, my whole body shaking. I looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. The fisheye lens showed the beige, patterned carpet and the door to my neighbor's apartment. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I was just being paranoid. It was probably my neighbor, drunk, fumbling with his keys. I turned away from the door and my intercom buzzed. The loud, electronic beer made me scream and drop my glass, which shattered on the tile. The intercom was for the front lobby, to let guests in. I walked over, my heart in my throat, and pressed the talk button. Hello. At first, there was just static. Then a voice. It was distorted, like it was being spoken through a cheap voice changer, or from behind a mask. Let me in, it whispered. I know you're in there. I just want to talk. Who is this? I demanded, trying to sound brave. Alex? Is that you? I'm calling the police. The line went quiet. Then a low, breathy chuckle. The police can't help you, the voice said. The doorman already let me up. I told him I was your brother. Happy Halloween. The intercom clicked off. He was in the building. He was on his way up. I ran to my door, my hands fumbling with the deadbolt and the chain. I heard the ding of the elevator at the end of the hall. I heard the door slide open. And then I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, walking down the hall. They stopped, right outside my door. I was backed against the wall, holding my phone, 911 dialed, my thumb hovering over the call button. Silence. Just pure, agonizing silence. Then, tap, tap, tap. A light, playful tapping on my door. "I see you," the muffled voice whispered, through the peephole. "You should cover that." I looked at the peephole, and I saw it. A tiny, black circle. An eye. Someone was pressed against the other side of my door, looking in. I screamed and threw myself into my bedroom, slamming and locking the door. I called 911. I was sobbing, incoherent, telling them someone was trying to break into my apartment. I could hear him at the front door. He wasn't tapping anymore. He was pushing. The wood of the door was groaning. He was slamming his body against it. Thud, thud, thud. And then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. I heard yelling in the hallway. A man's voice. "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" It was my neighbor, Mr. Henderson, the ex-Marine. I heard a scuffle. More yelling. And then the sound of the elevator doors opening again and running footsteps. The police arrived 5 minutes later. The hallway was empty. My front door had a huge crack in the frame and the deadbolt was barely holding. Mr. Henderson said he'd opened his door and seen a man in a black hoodie and that same white grinning mask trying to shoulder barge my door. He'd yelled and the man had just looked at him, then turned and sprinted for the elevator. The security footage was terrifying. The doorman had let him in. Alex, or someone dressed exactly like him, had walked in, flashed a fake ID, said, "I'm here for 10B, and the doorman had bussed him right up. The camera in the elevator showed him alone, just staring at the camera. The grinning mask pointed right at the lens for 10 floors. I broke my lease and moved out the next week. I quit my job. I filed a police report and a restraining order, but Alex had vanished. He'd cleared out his desk that same afternoon. No one knew where he went. His old roommate said he'd just packed a bag and left. The police never found him. I still have nightmares about that mask. That blank, white, smiling plastic face. And the worst part, the part that keeps me awake, is that I never actually saw his eyes. I have no proof it was Alex. It was just a mask. It could have been anyone, and it could be anywhere. When I was 10 years old, my best friend was a kid named Sam. We lived in one of those 1980s suburban developments where all the houses looked the same, and the woods at the end of the street were our personal kingdom. Halloween was, for us, the Super Bowl. We planned our routes for weeks, aiming for maximum efficiency and candy acquisition. This specific Halloween in 1988 was perfect. It was a cold, crisp Tuesday. We were both dressed as Ghostbusters, complete with proton packs made from cardboard boxes and vacuum cleaner hoses. Our parents had given us the standard rules: stay together, don't go inside anyone's house, and be home by 9:30 when the streetlights come on. We tore through the neighborhood. We hit every house on our street, then the next 2 streets over. Our pillowcases were getting heavy. It was getting late. The air was getting colder and the crowds of smaller kids had vanished. It was just us and a few other groups of older kids running from pool of light to pool of light. It was 9:15 p.m. We were supposed to be heading home. We were cutting through the park when Sam stopped. "Wait," he said, pointing. We missed one. He was pointing down the end of Sycamore Street, a road that dead-ended at the edge of the woods. There was one house down there, the house at the end. We called it the Turnbull House. No one ever went to the Turnbull House. It wasn't haunted in a spooky way. It was just empty, or we thought it was. It was set way back from the road, mostly hidden by overgrown pine trees. The paint was peeling and the lawn was just a mess of weeds. But tonight, for the first time ever, the porch light was on. It was a single dim yellow bulb, casting a sickly glow on the sagging porch. "No way, man," I said, my voice dropping. "My mom said not to go down there." "Don't be a baby," Sam said, already jogging toward it. "It's Halloween. They have their light on. That's the rule. Lights on, they have to give you candy. And look, no one else has been there. We'll get the best stuff." He had a point. The promise of untouched candy was too strong. I adjusted my proton pack and ran to catch up. The closer we got, the quieter the world became. The noise of the neighborhood, the distant laughter, the cars, all faded. The only sound was our plastic costume boots scuffing on the cracked pavement. The house was even worse up close. The air was still. There were no decorations, no jack-o'-lanterns, no spooky sound CD playing. Just that one sad yellow light. We climbed the 3 rickety steps, which groaned under our weight. The porch was covered in dead leaves. We stood in front of the door. It was heavy, dark wood with a tarnished brass knocker. Sam, being braver, knocked. Thud, thud, thud. We waited. Nothing. "See," I whispered, pulling on his sleeve. "Let's go." "It's late. Just wait," he said. He knocked again, harder. Thud, thud, thud. This time we heard something. A sound from inside. A scrape, like a heavy chair being dragged across a bare wooden floor. Then footsteps. Slow, heavy footsteps coming toward the door. Thump, thump, thump. A shadow blocked the light from the peephole. A series of metallic clinks and clicks sounded, like multiple locks being undone. The door handle, a brass lion's head, slowly turned. The door opened with a long, drawn-out creak. A woman stood in the doorway. She was ancient, taller than any old woman I'd ever seen, with a long, thin face, pale skin, and hair the color of steel wool, pulled back so tight it made her eyes look stretched. She was wearing a simple, old-fashioned black dress. She didn't smile. She just looked down at us. Her eyes were pale, almost colorless. Behind her, the house was dark. The only light came from a single bare bulb hanging in the hallway, which smelled like dust and something sweet, like rotting flowers. "Trick or treat," Sam finally squeaked, his voice cracking. The woman stared at him. She didn't move for a long second. Then her face split into a smile. It was the most terrifying smile I've ever seen. Her teeth were small and gray, and her gums were dark. "Of course," she rasped, her voice like dry leaves. "We've been waiting for you." She turned and disappeared into the darkness of the hall. Come in," her voice echoed back. "The candy is in the kitchen." "No," I whispered, grabbing Sam's arm. "We can't. We're not allowed." Sam was frozen, his eyes wide. He was staring past the woman into the house. "Just for a second," he said, his voice in a trance. He was looking at something. I looked too. In the dim hallway I could see a table, and it was piled high, not with candy, with toys, old antique toys, a porcelain doll, a red metal truck, a rocking horse. "We have so many wonderful things for you," the woman's voice cooed from the dark. "All you have to do is come and get them." She reappeared at the edge of the light. She was holding something, a large glass bowl, but it wasn't full of candy bars. It was full of apples, big, beautiful red and green apples. They looked perfect. "Just take one," she said, her smile widening. She held the bowl out to us. Sam, as if mesmerized, reached his hand out. Just as his fingers were about to touch the apple, a man's voice boomed from the darkness behind her. "Martha, who is at the door?" The woman flinched. The smile vanished. She looked terrified. "Just children, dear," she called back, her voice shaking. "Begging for sweets. We have no sweets for beggars. Shut the door." "Shut it now," the voice roared. It was a horrible, wet, guttural sound. The woman's face changed. The fear was replaced by a cold, sudden rage. She looked back at us. Her pale eyes were burning. "Go," she hissed. She didn't just say it. She spat the word. "Get out." She slammed the door in our faces. The boom echoed down the street. We heard the locks clicking back into place, one by one. We didn't say a word. We didn't run. We just walked very fast back down the cracked sidewalk. We didn't look back. We didn't talk until we were back in the circle of our own streetlight, back in our neighborhood. "That," Sam said, his voice shaking, "was weird." "Yeah," I said. "Weird." We went home. We never told our parents. We never talked about it again. The next day, I rode my bike down Sycamore Street. It was just a bright, sunny afternoon. The Turnbull house looked exactly as it always had. Dilapidated, empty, dead. The porch light was off. The overgrown grass was undisturbed. It looked like no one had been there in 20 years. But I know what I saw, and I know what I smelled. That sweet, sickly, rotting flower smell. I've smelled it a few times since. Once, when a deer was hit by a car near my house and we didn't find it for a week. And once, in anatomy class in college. I don't know who lived in that house. I don't know if they were even alive. But I know one thing. They weren't giving out apples. And they weren't waiting for trick-or-treaters. They were waiting for us. This happened when I was in my early 20s, maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I was driving home from a Halloween party at my friend's college, which was about 3 hours away from my apartment. The party was great, but I had to work the next day, so I ducked out around 1 a.m. I was stone cold sober, just tired and sugared up on cheap party punch and candy. My costume was minimal, just a werewolf mask and some flannel, and I'd thrown the mask in the passenger seat. My route home involved a long 2-hour stretch on Route 19, which is a state highway that cuts through a massive, unpopulated state forest. It's 2 lanes, no lights, no service, and spotty to non-existent cell reception. At 2 a.m. on a Halloween night, it was just me in the dark. The road was a black ribbon winding through solid walls of trees, and my headlights were the only light for miles. I was about an hour into that stretch, blasting a playlist to stay awake when I saw the car. It was pulled over on the shoulder of the opposite lane. It was a dark-colored sedan, but what was weird was that its lights were off. All of them. No headlights, no taillights, not even hazard lights. It was just dead. Standing in front of the car, illuminated by my headlights, was a person. They were wearing a costume. It was a full-body animal suit. A rabbit. Like one of those creepy vintage-looking Easter bunny costumes, with a huge, oversized, smiling but dead-eyed mascot head. The white fur was stained and matted with what looked like dirt. The person was just standing in the road next to their car, waving their arms, flagging me down. My first thought was, this is a trap. I'm not an idiot. I've seen horror movies. You don't stop for a broken-down car in the middle of nowhere on Halloween for a guy in a rabbit suit. My foot stayed firm on the accelerator. As I passed them, I got a clear look. The rabbit head was turned, tracking my car. The black, mesh eyes seemed to stare right into me. The person inside must have been huge, at least 6'5". I sped up, my heart pounding, glancing in my rearview mirror. The figure just stood there watching me go. I drove for another minute, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, and then my car sputtered. It lurched and the engine cut out. I coasted to a stop on the side of the road. This was not happening. My car was new. It was reliable. I tried the ignition. Click, click, click. Nothing. I tried again. Click, click, click. The battery was fine. The dash lights were on, the radio was still playing. The engine just wouldn't turn over. "Oh, you have got to be kidding me," I said to the empty car. I grabbed my phone. No signal. Of course. I sat there for a minute in the dark, my car silent. The only sound was the wind in the pines. I was completely and totally stranded. And I knew with a creeping, horrible certainty that I was not alone. The rabbit was about a mile back. I locked all my doors. I turned off my dash lights to save the battery. I sat in the pitch black, staring into my rearview mirror, waiting. And then I saw them. Headlights. Coming up behind me slow. A wave of relief washed over me, until I realized they weren't a car. They were just lights. Two small, round lights, bobbing and weaving. Someone was walking up the road toward me, holding a flashlight. No, not a flashlight. My eyes adjusted to the dark, and I realized what I was seeing. The person was walking, and the rabbit head. The eyes were glowing. Not bright like LEDs, but a faint, internal reddish glow, like dying embers. I lost it. I started screaming. I was twisting the key in the ignition over and over, begging, come on, start, you piece of junk, start." Click, click, click. Click, click, click. The figure was closer now, maybe 100 yards back, walking slowly, steadily, just walking. It was in my headlights now. The white fur looked almost gray in the beams, and I could see the dark stains clearly. It wasn't mud. It was wet, dark red and black, smeared all over the front of the suit. It stopped about 50 feet behind my car, right in the center of my high beams. Just stood there, and it tilted its head. That same curious, inhuman tilt. I was hyperventilating. I was crying. I was trapped. I put my head on the steering wheel just for a second to catch my breath. This isn't real, this isn't real. And then I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. It wasn't at the back. It was at my window. My driver's side window. I snapped my head up. The rabbit's face was inches from mine, separated by the glass. Its glowing red eyes stared into mine. The grinning, painted-on smile was chipped and stained. It was so tall it was having to crouch down to look in. It hadn't walked around the car. I'd been staring at my rearview mirror. It must have gone into the woods. It had flanked me. It just stared. For a long, long time. Then it slowly raised one giant, fur-covered, three-fingered glove, and it stroked the window. A long, slow squeak of the matted fur on the glass. I unlocked my jaw and I let out a scream that I didn't even recognize. I grabbed the first thing I could find, my werewolf mask, and I threw it at the window as if that would do anything. And then the rabbit laughed. It wasn't a human laugh. It was a high-pitched, giggling, wheezing sound, like air escaping a punctured lung. It was the most horrible sound I have ever heard. Took a step back. It was still giggling. It reached behind its back and pulled something out. It was a tire iron. A long, heavy, steel tire iron. It looked at the iron, then back at me. The giggling stopped. It raised the iron over its head. "No!" I screamed, and I slammed my eyes shut, bracing for the glass to shatter. Vroom. A massive, deafening roar and a blast of light. I opened my eyes. A huge 18-wheeler was bearing down on us, horn blaring, its high beams lighting up the entire road like it was daytime. The rabbit figure recoiled, putting its arm up to block the light. The truck didn't slow down. It just laid on the horn and swerved, barely missing the figure in my car. The gust from the truck rocked my little sedan. I looked back at the rabbit. It was standing in the road, staring after the truck. It seemed angry. It looked at the tire iron in its hand, then back at me. It shook its head, slowly. Then it turned, and with that same lurching, unnatural walk, it just walked off the road and disappeared into the dark woods. It didn't even look back. I sat there, shaking for I don't know how long. A minute? 10? Finally, my brain started working. I put the key in the ignition. The car started. It started instantly, like there had never been a problem. I didn't wait. I threw the car in gear and I floored it. I drove 90 miles an hour all the seaway home, not even taking my foot off the gas. I ran into my apartment and didn't come out for 2 days. The police, of course, found nothing. They patrolled Route 19 but found no broken down car, no one in a rabbit suit. They treated me like I was crazy or drunk or both. But I know what happened. I went to a mechanic. He said my car was in perfect condition. He said, there's no reason it should have stalled like that. Unless what? I asked. Unless someone used an EMP device, like a little high-frequency kill switch. But, only cops and, well, no one really has those. You've been watching too many movies, kid. I don't drive on Route 19 anymore. I don't go to Halloween parties. And sometimes when I'm driving at night, I see a piece of trash on the side of the road, a white plastic bag, a scrap of paper, and my heart stops. Because for just a second, I think it's a rabbit waiting. This is a story from my freshman year of college, and it's the reason I'm terrified of dorm rooms. I lived in an old, Gothic-looking building named Rawlings Hall. It was one of those classic, creepy-looking brick buildings from the 1920s, with long hallways, creaky floors, and a reputation. The story was that the entire 4th floor had been shut down and sealed off since the 1970s. The official reason was asbestos or structural issues, depending on which RA you asked. The unofficial reason, the one everyone whispered about, was a fire. A bad one on Halloween night in 1973 that had killed a student. They said her room for 13 was the source, and that the entire floor was too damaged or too haunted to ever reopen. The door to the 4th floor was at the top of the main stairwell, a heavy, gray steel fire door with a wired glass window. It was locked, of course, and had a huge, ominous "No admittance" sign on it. We all lived on the 2nd and 3rd floors. It was my first Halloween away from home. I wasn't a party person, so I decided to just stay in, study for midterms, and hand out candy to the few RAs who were dorm storming. My roommate, a party girl named Jess, was at a frat party, dressed as a sexy cat or something. The dorm was practically empty. It was quiet, eerily quiet. Around 11 p.m., I was deep into my chemistry textbook when I heard it. Music. It was faint, but it was definitely music. It was old, really old. Sounded like 1920s jazz. Tinny, like it was being played on an old Victrola. I took my headphones off. It was coming from above me. My room was 313, right below 413. I tried to ignore it. It was probably just some guys on my floor with a weird taste in music. But the music got louder, and it was joined by laughter. It sounded like a party, a big one. I could hear multiple voices, the clink of glasses, and dancing, the thump of feet on a floor that was supposed to be empty. I got up and went into the hallway. It was deserted. My RA store was closed, a note saying "at the party" taped to it. I was the only one there, and the sound was 100% coming from the ceiling. It was coming from the 4th floor. I went to the stairwell. The steel door to the 4th floor was at the top of the landing. As I got closer, the music was crystal clear. It was "Sing, Sing, Sing," that old swing song, and it was loud. The party was raging. I could feel the bass vibrating through the door. I put my hand on the steel. It was warm. And the wired glass window, which was usually dark, was glowing. A flickering orange-yellow light was coming from the other side, like firelight or candles. Dozens of them. "This is a prank," I whispered to myself. "Some seniors broke in and are throwing a party. They're going to get in so much trouble." I was annoyed but also curious. I pushed on the door's crash bar. It didn't budge. Locked. I put my eye to the wired glass. At first, all I could see was the flickering orange light. But then I saw a shadow move, and another. Silhouettes dancing past the light. People in costumes? But they looked weird. The women were in flapper dresses. The men were in suits and hats. They were all dancing. I saw a couple spin past laughing, but I couldn't hear their laugh. All I could hear was the music. Then one of the silhouettes stopped. Right in front of the window was a woman. She was facing the door, facing me. I couldn't see her features, just her black outline against the orange glow. She just stood there, watching me watch her. I jumped back from the door, my heart pounding. This was not a prank. The smell hit me then. I hadn't noticed it before. It was coming from under the door. The smell of smoke, not wood smoke, something else, something chemical, acrid, and something sweet, like burning sugar or burning hair. I ran. I sprinted back to my room, slammed the door, and locked it. I shoved my dresser in front of it just like in the movies. I was breathing so hard I thought I was going to pass out. The music was still going. Thump, thump, thump right above my head. Louder now. And the smell of smoke. It was in my room. It was seeping in through the vents. I grabbed my phone to call campus security, and my room light flickered and went out. I was in total darkness. The music stopped instantly, like a record being ripped off a turntable. The building went dead silent, more silent than before. No music, no party, no wind, no, nothing. And the smell of smoke was gone. It was replaced by the smell of cold, a damp, dusty, cold smell. I sat on my bed in the dark, clutching my phone. My eyes started to adjust. The only light was the glow-in-the-dark stars I'd stuck on my ceiling. And then I heard a new sound, right above my head. In room 413. Scratch, scratch, scratch. It wasn't a party. It was one person. And they were clawing at the floorboards. Scratch, scrape, scratch. As if they were trying to get through. Trying to get to me. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just sat there in the dark for 4 hours, listening to the scratching. It never stopped. It was slow and rhythmic and determined. Scratch, scrape, scratch. At 3 a.m., my roommate Jess stumbled in, drunk, flipping on the light, which now worked, and yelling about some guy. "Oh my God," she said. "Why is it so cold in here? And what's that smell? It smells like a wet dog." The scratching had stopped the instant she opened the door. The sun came up. I didn't sleep. I packed a bag. I told Jess I was going home for the weekend. I never spent another night in that room. I put in for a room transfer the next Monday, claiming my roommate was a nightmare. I never told anyone what I heard, or saw, or smelled. A few weeks later, I was in the library and I looked up old campus newspapers on microfiche. I found it. October 31st, 1973. Tragic Halloween fire claims student. A co-ed, a freshman named Martha, had been in her room for 113. The cause was undetermined, but it was suspected she'd been using a hot plate or candles for a ritual. She hadn't been found until the next day. The article said the fire was small. It had burned itself out. It hadn't even spread beyond her room. It had just been her. I lived in a different dorm for the rest of my time at that college, but I'll never forget that sound. That slow, steady, patient scratching. She didn't die in the fire. She'd been trapped, and she was just trying to get out. My name is Sarah, and I was a full-time babysitter for about 2 years after college. This story is from a Halloween night about 5 years ago. I was working for a new family, the Millers. They lived in a very remote, very large house on the edge of a reservation. To get there, you had to drive 10 miles down a dirt road. It was the definition of in the middle of nowhere. The Millers were nice enough, very new money. They were going to a huge Halloween bash in the city and were paying me triple time, plus a bonus to stay overnight. The kid Leo was 8. He was a quiet, strange kid and he was obsessed with Halloween pranks. His dad had even shown me a few. A rubber spider in the silverware drawer, a jump scare skeleton in the closet. "He's all boy," Mr. Miller had said, laughing. The night started off fine. Leo and I watched a movie. I fell for 2 of his pranks and he cackled. By 9 p.m., he was fast asleep in his bedroom at the end of a long, dark hallway. The house was a smart house, all controlled by an iPad in the kitchen. Lights, locks, security. The Millers had shown me the security feed, 4 cameras. 1 on the front gate a mile away, 1 on the front door, 1 on the back deck, and 1 in the motor court by the garage. I was settled in for a long night of bad TV and leftover pizza. Around 11:30 p.m., I was in the kitchen when the iPad screen lit up. Motion detected, front gate. I tapped the screen. The camera feed was grainy, night vision green. I could see the high iron gates and the car. It was just sitting there, its headlights off. I felt a jolt of alarm. "Hello?" I said, tapping the intercom button. "Can I help you?" No answer. The car just sat. I watched for a full minute. Maybe it was someone who was lost? Then the car's headlights flashed. On then off. What? I tapped the Call Millers button. It went straight to voicemail. Of course. I called 911. The dispatcher sounded bored. "Ma'am, a car at a gate isn't an emergency. They're probably just lost. Call us back if they try to enter the property." I hung up, my hands shaking. I went back to the camera feed. The car was gone. Just gone. It hadn't come through the gate. It must have turned around and left. I let out a breath. Just some kids, spooked by the intercom. About 30 minutes later, I was in the living room. It was a noise from the back of the house, from the deck. I ran to the iPad. Motion detected, back deck. I pulled up the feed. My blood froze. 3 people, all wearing those cheap, clear plastic Halloween masks, the ones with the red painted cheeks and dead eyes. They were also wearing matching dark green hoodies. They were just standing on the deck, looking at the camera. One of them, a tall one, waved. Slowly. I screamed. I hit the panic button on the smart home screen. The Millers had said it would set off a deafening alarm and call the police. I pressed it. A small, polite beep came from the iPad and a message, error, alarm system offline. No, I whispered. I ran to the back door, a sliding glass door, and fumbled with the lock. It was already locked. I sprinted through the house, checking every window, every door. Lock. I was trapped. I ran to Leo's room. I was going to grab him, lock us in the master bathroom. I burst through his door. Leo, wake up, we have to. His bed was empty. The window was wide open, the curtains blowing in the night air. He was gone. This wasn't real. This could not be real. I ran back to the kitchen, to the iPad. I was going to call 911 again, and I saw him. On the camera. Leo. He was on the back deck. With them. He was standing right next to the 3 masked figures. He wasn't scared. He was smiling. He looked right at the camera, right at me, and he pointed at the camera, at the kitchen. Then the back door, the one I had just checked, the one that was locked, slid open. The tallest of the masked figures stepped inside. He was holding a can of silly string. He saw me and he sprayed it. It hit the wall, and he just stood there. Leo and the other 2 were right behind him, all in the house now. Trick or treat. Leo yelled, laughing his head off. The 3 masked figures pulled off their masks. They were teenagers, Leo's cousins. Oh my God, the tall one said, seeing my face. Your dad said you were in on it. My legs gave out. I slid to the floor, hyperventilating. It was a prank. The car at the gate. The offline alarm. Leo disappearing. It was all a prank. Mr. Miller's masterpiece. The kids, his cousins, had cut the power to the alarm system from the outside breaker. They had parked at the gate to scare me, then driven through the woods to the back. Leo had unlocked the back door for them. I was furious. I was shaking with so much adrenaline and terror I thought I was going to be sick. I yelled at them. I yelled at Leo. I called Mr. Miller and left him a minute-long screaming voicemail. The cousins, seeing I was genuinely traumatized, apologized and left. I locked Leo in his room. I didn't care, and I sat on the couch, shaking for the rest of the night. The Millers got home at 4 a.m. They were not sorry. Oh, come on, Sarah, Mr. Miller said, a little drunk. It was just a classic Halloween spook. You've got to be a bleedo, take a joke. I quit on the spot. I took their money and I walked out. But that's not the end of the story. That's not the part that scares me. The part that scares me happened a week later. I got a call from the police, from a detective. They had apparently listened to my 911 call, and they'd looked into the prank. The Miller family doesn't have any cousins in the state, the detective said, his voice flat. Leo is an only child. Both his parents are only children. He doesn't have any cousins. I went cold. What? We looked at the security footage from the gate. The detective continued. The car you saw? A 1990s green sedan. We ran the plates. It was stolen. It was found abandoned 2 towns over, wiped clean. The Miller's alarm system wasn't pranked. The phone line and the power line were both cut, professionally, from the pole on the main road. But the kids, I stammered. Leo, he knew them. He was laughing. We think, the detective said, his voice careful, that the people who entered the house weren't related to the Millers. We think they were strangers. And we think, based on what we found in the woods, tools, restraints, maps of the house, that they were not there to pull a prank. And they were not teenagers. But why did they just leave? I whispered. Why did they pretend it was a joke? We think you scared them, he said. When you called Mr. Miller, when you started yelling, you broke the script. You weren't a terrified, passive victim. You got loud. They didn't know who you were calling. They didn't know if the police were already on their way. So they improvised. They played it off, and they left. But I remembered what the tall one had in his hand. It wasn't silly string. The can was too big, too industrial. And when he sprayed it, it didn't. I never found out what was in that can. The police never caught them. The Millers moved. But I know one thing. Those weren't masks. Not the cheap, clear plastic kind. They were too real, too detailed. The way the skin, or the plastic, wrinkled around the eyes when they looked at me. They weren't just masks, they were faces.